would you come and say, I'm coming from the Rebbe, now I'm going to start to review to you what I heard. And he would say in pasuk, no explanation, no depth, no elaborating on it, just saying the pasuk. And his face would turn flaming red, tears would stream down his eyes. I heard a pasuk for this pasuk from the Rebbe. And the same with the other speaker, which means it's true, it wasn't something that he understood, but he felt that he was in a place of holiness, and he was felt like the Yidden felt when they were in the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore everything associated with that inspired him to the point that it brought him to tears, and he was so on such a high. So this story that we're going to tell you now is one of these simple Jews. He was by the Baal Shem Tov, and he spent Yontiv by the Baal Shem Tov, and then he came to Baal Shem Tov to say goodbye. And he lived in a city which is near Mezrich. So Baal Shem Tov said to him, you're going home, stop off in Mezrich, and please give regards to my student, Reb Dover, the Goin and the Tzaddik, Kodesh, V'Noira. He gave him praises like an amazing, holy, great, spiritual person. He was very excited that he can do something of a shlichus for the Baal Shem Tov. He went to Mezrich, and he asked around, where's the great rabbi here, Reb Dover? Nobody knew what he's talking about. There is no great rabbi here, Reb Dover. And after asking a number of people, he was convinced there is no such great rabbi. He said the only person that here that we know with the name Dover or Duber, however they called him, he is a teacher of little children. That might be the person you're looking for. Where does he live? So at the end of the town, there were that was the poor neighborhood. Most of the houses were like half caving in. And that was a place where he went to look for the Mezrich Magid. He found them on a street where, again, the houses there were very, you can see the people were suffering from poverty. This particular house that he went to, the Magid's house, he walked in, and there he was teaching little children. The Magid was sitting on a piece of wood, and the children were sitting on a board. And the Magid said to him, I'm teaching children now, I can't interrupt. Please come later in the evening, and we can talk. He didn't know why he came. So he went out, came back later in the evening. Later in the evening, things were changed already. The piece of the board turned into a bed. That's where the children were sleeping. The Maggid himself sat down on a chair. What was a chair? Not a chair. It was a block of wood. And he asked him to sit down on another block of wood. He's looking around. And of course, he gave him regards from the Baal Shem Tov, and he was very excited. And he says, I'm not a very rich man, but in my house, I at least have basic furniture. I have chairs, I have a table, I have beds. I mean, how do you live like this? So he said to him, at home? Home, yeah. At home, you need chair and table and a bed. You need lamps. That's where you need all these things. That's the story. What is the Friedrich Rabbi explaining? What does it mean? What he's saying is when a person travels, they don't have a house that they travel with furniture. They have a tent. I mean, the way it was in those days. They didn't have hotels like we have today. So you travel, you put up your tent, you take it apart. The tent is something which is transient. It moves along from one place to the next. You put it together, you take it apart. You put it together, you take it apart. A home is a place where you're there permanently. So what he's saying to him was, in a place where you're there permanently, that's where I have to be concerned that the furniture should be proper. But in a tent, that's not where you have proper furniture. And basically saying, this world and everything in this world is temporary. Person lives in this world a temporary amount of time, and then the neshama goes to Gan Eden, or then Mashiach comes and you live in a different kind of a life. And basically, it doesn't mean necessarily living in this world versus the next world. In this world itself, the point is, where do I live? I live in Torah and mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit, in Ruchnius and Gashmius, the business, the physical things, the material things in the home, all that to me is like a tent. All this is something which is something that's just secondary. It's tuffle. It's not the ikar. And therefore, I'm not going to invest myself in these materialistic things. In other words, what the Pri Rebbe says is like this. Yes, it was a time of good and plenty. It was a wonderful time. Everyone had fields and everyone had vineyards and everyone had Torah and everyone had beautiful homes. But when they went back home, they looked at everything. This is my tent. This is something temporary. This is something secondary. What's primary in my life is basically godliness and ruchnius and Torah and mitzvahs and everything associated with it. So what he writes is that when Yidden went back from Yerushalayim, they were all excited and they're happy, but they went back. Everybody had a different experience, naturally. In the base of English, they experienced Rosh Hashanah, they experienced Yom Kippur, they experienced Sukkot. But one thing they all came back with, and that general one thing is the understanding and the feeling that the primary thing in my life is Hashem, Torah, mitzvahs, neshama, ruchnius, and that's permanent, and that's the primary thing. Gashmius and eating and drinking and a home and business and money and all these kind of things, this is temporary. This is a tent. That's what it means they went back to their tents. So in other words, we just celebrated Tishrei, especially those who had the schus to be here. We celebrate Tishrei in the Rebbe's Daled Amos, Rosh Hashanah, Sesimit Shuvah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Beis Sheva, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Now that it's all coming to the next stage, the transition from Tishrei out into the rest of the world, V'Yakov Halach L'Darkei, we're going out on the road. What are we coming away with? So it reminds me of a story. It's a story that's brought out in the Sichos, where there was somebody who was teaching and he spoke about Malachim. In other words, that there are Malachim here, Malachim there, the Malachim do this, the Malachim do that. And there was someone there that was sort of skeptical about Malachim. You don't see them, you don't hear them, you don't feel them. So he made some sort of a comment about like, yeah, it's real, So he was told this mashal. I don't know where it originates from, but the Rebbe definitely mentioned it. And he gave a mashal that there are two people. Both of them are, let's say, people, I think this is the way the mashal goes, people they have a position in government, and they're going to a very important meeting, something which is really crucial to the entire country. They have to make a decision. And they're traveling to make a decision about something major. The country has to take a certain position, one way or another. And the position they take will affect the whole country. Not only the whole country, but if it's a position that they take, it might affect the whole world, because every country is affected by what goes on in other countries. Like right now, you think of Israel, Iran, whatever Israel does, or whatever Iran does, the whole world is involved. It pushes everyone this direction and that direction. Am I pro? Am I against? So these two people are going, get onto a horse and wagon, and they're traveling to the capital, or wherever it is, the big city, to have this big important meeting. So there are three levels of thought in this process. One is the horses. The horses are also thinking. What are they thinking? They're thinking, I can't wait till we get to our destination. I'm going to have my oats, have my food. That's what the horse is thinking. The balagala, the wagon driver, what is he thinking? He's thinking, I can't wait to get my destination, because then they're going to pay me, and I'll have the money that I'm working for to feed my family. And he concluded, so because the horse is thinking about oats, and the wagon driver is thinking about his money, that's why the meeting is not a meeting. And is that why the crucial issue that are at hand that have to be decided in this very important meeting about the country is not a meeting? In other words, for the horses, this is fine. For the balagala, for the wagon driver, that's as far as he goes. But for those that are in a different place, there's something much greater that's going on, and they can't wait to get to the destination to have the meeting to make a decision in what direction the country should go. So basically, one person thinks about oaths, another person thinks about other things, but that doesn't change the fact that because of that, the malachim aren't any malachim. In other words, people unfortunately are perceiving things in a very gashmizik way. So here, let's say we have yontif. For certain people, let's say children, what are they excited about? I got a new jacket, I got new pants, a girl got a new dress, and it's exciting. And we have, good foods. That's one level. And there are adults, unfortunately, that's about as far as it goes with certain adults also. The fact that they buy something new and there's such amazing meals, and we made this for this meal, made that for that meal, and that's the extent of it. And then there are people that are a little bit above the ground and think more about they have so much time to spend in shul, the songs are so beautiful, and we sit and meet with the family, all this, and then have to go to work for so many days and relax and be able to. It's all beautiful things, but it's a little bit step higher, upgrade from just food and clothing. But really, what Yontif is all about is ruchnius, is godliness. Every Yontif is a time that Hashem is revealed in the world, and every Yontif gives us something ruchnius, like we spoke about this in Tishrei. That on Rosh Hashanah, that's when we get the power to have Kabbalah's oil. On Yom Kippur, that's when Hashem gives us the power to be able to do tshuva. On Sukkot, that empowers us to have Avnus, that empowers us with Simcha. Simchas Torah empowers us with the power to dedicate ourselves for Torah study, especially dedicate ourselves for Torah study with Simcha and so on and so forth. So it's a time of Ruchnius that Hashem, it's a very wealthy Ruchnius month that's loaded with Ruchnius gifts and Ruchnius power. And therefore, when you look at it that way, it's a whole different experience. And what do we walk away with? We should walk away with that everything else is tense. It's true, we're human beings. We live on earth. So we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to drink, we do business, we do other things for relaxing. We have friends, we go out and have a good time. All this is part of being human. But on the other hand, to remember what is secondary and what is primary. What is a tent and what is the home. And that Gashmius is secondary. That's what we walk away with after an experience like this. We're so immersed in Ruchnius that we finally get it that the ikar of our whole purpose being in this world is Ruchnius. And everything else there is secondary. That's the conclusion of what we come away with from this yontif. And it's very important to think about it because you need a bridge. You need a bridge to bridge the gap between yontif and the rest of the year. And that bridge is now. This week is the time that we're still under the inspiration of Simchas Torah, of Sukkot, of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We're still there. In fact, even in Halacha, we don't say Tachlim today. We won't say Tachlim the whole week. We won't say Tachlim until this month is over, which means that to a certain extent, we're still in the spirit of Tishrei. On the other hand, it's not Yontif anymore. So it's like a bridge. What is a bridge? A bridge is something that bridges the gap between two places that are far from each other. When Brooklyn is here, Manhattan is there. How do I get from Brooklyn to Manhattan? There's water in the middle. So you build a bridge. What's the definition of a bridge? One part of the bridge is in Brooklyn. The other end of the bridge is in Manhattan. If you have something that's so long, it stretches from Brooklyn to Manhattan, then I can go from Brooklyn to Manhattan on the bridge. What if the bridge is only in Brooklyn, but the other half is not in Manhattan? Or it's in Manhattan and the other part is not in Brooklyn? It can't serve its purpose. It needs to be in both places. Yeah, I'm going to just finish my thought and then ask a question. The same is here. When you're in Tishrei, fully in Tishrei, you're in one place. Soon we're going to be fully out there in the world doing our regular activities. So this week is sort of the bridge. We're not fully out of Tishrei. It's still Yontovik in a certain sense. We don't say Tapanun. On the other hand, Yontiv is over, already going back to regular schedule. So therefore, we're also have one foot in the other half. So this is the week that sort of bridges the gap between Tishrei and the rest of the year. This is the week where we can sort of still take the inspiration from Yontiv and bring it over to the rest of the year. And we said before, to recognize that the main thing is ruchnis and godliness, and everything else is secondary. Yes?
What event is more important? I mean, obviously not more important, but how do you elevate this week for making sure your brain is sturdy enough for all the workings that you've invested in the trade to come with you?
The way we do it is as follows. I mean, of course, every person has their own journey, but there's a mimer from the Mittel Rebbe, which the Rebbe quotes often, that if a person makes a achlata, okay, this year I'm going to be different. That's not going to do much. Why? When it comes to davening, you say, I'll be different, but not with davening. That'll be with learning. When it comes to learning, you say, well, it doesn't have to be learning. I could be different with the way I make brachas. You don't go anywhere with that. It's a very general achlata. The way that the inspiration could really be applied to practical is if I take that achlata and I connect it to something very specific, something specific that I'm going to do as a result of this inspiration, and that something becomes like the wick that holds the fire. You know, a fire is also something spiritual, relatively. And the fire is always trying to move away. It's the wick that holds us down. So the spirituality that we gained could float away. It's something not physical, so we can easily fade away and we can lose it. The wick that holds it down is whatever thing I do as sort of a result of that experience, and I make up my mind because of that, I'll do this thing, specific, A, B, C. I'll be learning something different. I'll be doing this. I'll be saying brachas differently. I will wash my hands differently. I'll do this different or that different. That becomes the wick. And even though it's one single thing, but still it'll hold, it'll somehow help me retain the inspiration of Yontif for the rest of the year. That's going to be the physical anchor that's going to hold on to things. I think so, yeah. Until the end of Tishrei. Right, because most of the month you don't say Tachlon, because from after Yom Kippur you don't say Tachlon. So most of the month you don't say Tachlon, so therefore you don't say it till the end of Tishrei.
Also in Nisan, no?
What?
Also in Nisan, we don't say Tachlon.
In Nisan also, yeah. The only thing with Nisan is we don't say Tachlon from the beginning of the month, from Aleph. Over here, we say in the beginning, because we say Tachlon on 7 days of Tshuva, but after Yom Kippur, we don't say Tachlon anymore.
If you feel good from Yontif, it makes sense, right? It's like a line. You feel like the joy, the simcha is still like with you very much.
Right. In fact, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but remember, we spoke about this Tishrei, that it took 2 weeks for them to get back home, and they only got home the 7th day of Cheshvan. So it says in Gemara that those 2 weeks, they still felt like they were in Yerushalayim. Until they got home, they didn't totally leave where they came from. It reminds me of somebody, a friend of mine, when we went to Australia, Shlichus, when we came back, a second group came. One of the Bachim in the second group, his birthday was on the 5th day of Nisan. So he left New York the 4th day of Nisan, and you arrive in Australia on the 6th day of Nisan, and there is no 5th day of Nisan. So here's the Rebbe, what should he do with the customs of a birthday? So the Rebbe said, and it's also relevant to other areas in halacha, as long as the plane didn't land, you go by the place where you're coming from. In other words, I didn't totally leave the place that I left until I arrive at my destination. When I arrive at my destination, that's when I when I step here, that's when I step out of there. But as long as I didn't arrive to the new place, I'm still connected to the previous place. So until the Yidden came back home to their homes in Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael, wherever it was, they still didn't leave Yerushalayim. They were still in that spirit. So this is the first week. And then there's another level, which is until the 7th day of Cheshvan. But this is the time, these 2 weeks, is the time for our V'yakov Olos Adarka. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to start this mimer from the Rebbe, Rebbe Marash. It's also a very special mimer, and Mitzvah will talk about it tomorrow. What it is? These are going to be the workbooks. The books are in the closet. We'll take it out tomorrow. Okay, so everybody should have success in their V'yakov Olos Adarka.